Good afternoon. I'm Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Wednesday, June the 22nd. The Criminal Justice Task Force of the Arkansas Legislature met this morning at the state capitol. Lindsay Miller reports for the Arkansas Times that they heard some fairly familiar numbers. Our prison population is increasing and rather dramatically, up 70% over only the last 3 years. Part of this reason is because the legislature insisted we get tough on parole violators, and indeed parole and probation violators account for about 40% of the increase in prison population. The problem is, if you want to call it that, is that the probation and parole violators aren't being sent back for new crimes, but for technical violations, failure to report to a probation officer, for example. The thought is, in the criminal justice reform world, that probation and parole is less expensive than prisons, that people who are on probation and parole do a better job at not reoffending as criminals, not perfectly, of course, and that we ought to turn some of our attention there. Will this Arkansas legislature take that as a smarter view of dealing with probation and parole, or will they continue to insist on locking everybody up as long as possible rather than risk having a probation violator commit another crime? That's the big dilemma the legislature faces in 2017. Great news from one of my favorite people in Washington, D.C. today, Representative John Lewis of Georgia, the noted civil rights activist, led a sit-in on the House floor today because of the refusal of the Republican leadership to hold votes on gun control measures. A number of Democrats have joined him. Needless to say, there are no Arkansas Republican congressmen sitting down on the floor of the House and demanding a vote. John Lewis says that sometimes it's never wrong to do right, and he asked where the heart and where the soul of the U.S. House of Representatives is. I can tell you where their heart is. It's in the pocketbook of the NRA. The question is whether the people at large will finally speak up. Democrats forced some votes, unsuccessful in the Senate this week. There's been this sit-in. Perhaps there's time for a great movement, as the civil rights movement illustrated in the 1960s, for a time to do right, as John Lewis says. Elsewhere, the Arkansas Times' Leslie Peacock confirmed this morning in the story on the Arkansas blog something I mentioned here yesterday. The White River Bridge on US 79 at Clarendon is going to be at least a year late in being completed because, well, guess what? They install some devices that are meant to absorb shock, basically, from earthquake and that sort of things. Put them in upside down or backwards, depending on your point of view, but wrong, and where they won't work. Corrections are going to have to be made, as I've noticed. Are these the kind of guys you want to build a 12-lane bridge, one of the third widest in the United States, in the middle of downtown Little Rock? Not me so much. Johnny Key, the state education commissioner, spoke to the Little Rock Board of Directors last night. He came out of his hidey hole for a rare appearance in public. Got some questions from the members of the city board. What he said was not particularly reassuring about its speedy return of the Little Rock School District to local control. He seems to suggest it could be years away. He also says repeatedly things that suggest he still wants to continue a path of expanding charter schools in Little Rock. That means nothing but bad news for the Little Rock School District if we continue to drain away families with higher incomes and already performing students into charter schools. What's going to be left is going to be a difficult student population. Bad news from Johnny Key. He did get some pushback from City Director Kathy Webb, among others. She says, let's put a halt to the charter school expansion and try and keep the good teachers we have. Michael Poore, the new school superintendent, made a point of noting Johnny Key's push for student-focused education. Funny thing, I think most people in education today are student-focused. I think this is a hidden slam at school teachers. Part of the Walton Family Foundation attack on teachers' unions and teachers in general as overpaid, underworked people. I think they're wrong. A new report today says Arkansas gets a grade of F on gender and racial diversity on the bench. Our judges tend to be mostly white males. They're only 12% black and only 24% women. There is the ironic note that 4 of the 7 Supreme Court justices are women, all white women, of course. There's only 1 black appellate judge in Arkansas. They call this the gavel gap. It's not a good thing to have all the judges that try cases not look very much like the people who come before them. And finally, Donald Trump today took the gloves off again and started whacking on Hillary Clinton, calling her a liar. The immediate press coverage afterwards were noting the number of times Donald Trump lied about Hillary Clinton's record. We're going to have quite a presidential election race for the rest of this summer, I think. Trump needs to do this kind of attack, I think, to hold his position in the Republican Party, though there are a lot of people getting nervous about having a know-nothing as the presidential nominee for the Republican Party. That's it for today. I'm Max Brantley.